On the evening of July 6, 2012, Skylar Neese, a 16-year-old high school student from Star City, West Virginia, walked out of her apartment window, never to return home. That night, she disappeared without a trace, leaving her parents, Dave and Mary Neese, frantic with worry. Skylar, who had been a teenager with a typically rebellious streak, had snuck out before, but she always made her way back home. This time, however, she didn't. Skylar had always been a loving daughter, and her relationship with her parents was strong. Her absence raised immediate concerns, and her parents quickly contacted local authorities, reporting her as missing. The police began their investigation, but initially they believed Skylar had run away. In the beginning, many people thought that she had simply decided to leave town and start a new life. There was no sign of foul play. Skylar's best friends, Shelia Eddy and Rachel Schoaf, were among the last people to see her. They initially claimed that they had all been hanging out the night before Skylar disappeared, driving around town. According to their statements, they had picked Skylar up around midnight, and after spending time driving around, they dropped her back off near her apartment around 1 a.m. Shelia and Rachel insisted they didn't know where Skylar had gone after that. To them, it was simply a case of a teenager sneaking out without informing her parents. The investigation, however, took a strange turn. Skylar's friends acted strangely during the days following her disappearance. Shelia, who was particularly close to Skylar, seemed unnaturally calm about the situation, even posting photos on social media of herself smiling and laughing. Rachel was more visibly upset but also avoided giving concrete answers when questioned by authorities. Despite the lack of evidence pointing to foul play, the Neese family refused to believe their daughter had just run away. Skylar was a responsible girl, and it was out of character for her to disappear like this without informing anyone. Her parents pressed for a more thorough investigation, demanding that the police not dismiss her case as a runaway. Skylar's parents were right to be suspicious. As weeks passed, a critical clue would eventually surface, and it would become clear that Skylar's disappearance was anything but a runaway case. Skylar Neese, Shelia Eddy, and Rachel Schoaf had been close friends since middle school. They spent hours together, shared secrets, and navigated the trials of adolescence side by side. But as they grew older, the dynamics of their friendship began to shift. Skylar, who had always been the more grounded and sensible of the trio, started to feel disconnected from her two friends. Shelia, with her magnetic personality and charm, had always been the leader of the group, and Rachel, though quieter, was fiercely loyal to her. But Skylar started to feel like the odd one out. Shelia and Rachel had become closer, spending more time together without involving Skylar. Skylar had also become increasingly aware of certain secrets the two girls were hiding, things that she felt would disrupt their seemingly perfect friendship. Although the three girls continued to hang out, the tension between them was palpable. Skylar was reportedly more and more frustrated with Shelia's controlling behavior, and she began to voice concerns about the direction their friendship was taking. Shelia, who thrived on attention and manipulation, was said to have become angry when Skylar didn't agree with her on various matters, especially when it came to the group's relationships with boys and other friends. There were also rumors circulating about Rachel and Shelia's romantic interests, but these were never confirmed. Skylar allegedly knew about these secrets, and there's a strong possibility that she had threatened to expose them during one of their arguments. Despite these tensions, Skylar still considered Shelia and Rachel her friends. She continued to spend time with them, perhaps hoping to mend the cracks in their friendship. However, unbeknownst to her, Shelia and Rachel had already made up their minds they wanted to kill Skylar. The murder of Skylar Neese was a premeditated act that had been planned for months. Shelia and Rachel had talked about killing Skylar for a long time. According to Rachel's later confession, the two girls had discussed it several times before they finally acted on it. They felt that Skylar was a burden to their lives and that she no longer fit into their plans. They wanted her gone, and they were willing to go to extreme lengths to make that happen. On the night of July 5, 2012, Shelia and Rachel invited Skylar to join them for a late-night drive. They had made it seem like a normal hangout, but they had other plans. They picked Skylar up around midnight and drove to a remote area near the Pennsylvania border, away from the eyes of their families and anyone who might overhear their plans. Once they arrived at the desolate spot, the two girls turned on Skylar. The atmosphere quickly shifted from friendly chatter to something darker and more sinister. At some point during their time there, they attacked Skylar. They had brought a kitchen knife with them, and as the plan had been discussed, the two girls began to stab Skylar repeatedly. Skylar, who fought back bravely, was no match for the two girls who had planned the murder. She was overpowered and ultimately died from the injuries inflicted by the knife. The crime was violent and shocking in its brutality. Skylar's body was then left in the woods, buried in a shallow grave that the girls had prepared in advance. They used shovels to cover her body and attempted to erase any evidence of their crime. After Skylar's body was discovered, the police investigation intensified. The case became a nationwide story as more details came to light about the nature of Skylar's disappearance. Authorities began to suspect that Shelia and Rachel knew more than they had let on. The breakthrough in the case came in December 2012, months after Skylar's disappearance. Rachel, struggling with the weight of her guilt, broke down during a conversation with her mother. She admitted to her parents that she and Shelia had killed Skylar. According to Rachel's confession, the two girls had planned the murder for months, and it was not a spur-of-the-moment decision. They had discussed it in detail, and Rachel had even helped bury the body after the murder. Rachel's confession led authorities to the location of Skylar's body in January 2013. The area, which was remote and difficult to access, had been combed over by investigators several times before, but the girls' involvement finally gave them the exact location. The remains of Skylar Neese were uncovered, and DNA testing confirmed her identity. Rachel was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, and Shelia was soon taken into custody as well. The two girls were interrogated, and while Shelia initially denied any involvement, it soon became clear that she had played an active role in the murder. Shelia later pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, while Rachel pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. In 2013, Shelia Eddy was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years. Rachel Schoaf was sentenced to 30 years in prison, with eligibility for parole after 10 years. The case shocked the community and the nation, as it was a reminder of the depths of betrayal and how even the closest of friends could turn on each other in the most horrific ways. Skylar's parents, Dave and Mary Neese, were devastated by the loss of their daughter. In the years following the murder, they became vocal advocates for missing persons and worked tirelessly to ensure that other families wouldn't suffer as they had. Their efforts led to the passage of Skylar's Law in West Virginia, which ensures that all missing children under the age of 18 are immediately given Amber Alerts, regardless of the circumstances surrounding their disappearance. Skylar's story has become one of caution and warning. It highlights the dangers of trusting the wrong people and the importance of vigilance in maintaining healthy relationships. While her life was tragically cut short, her legacy lives on through the advocacy of her parents, who continue to fight for justice and the protection of children across the country. In the end, Skylar Neese's death was a senseless tragedy, a crime born out of jealousy, manipulation, and betrayal. The people who were once her closest friends were the ones who turned on her in the most unimaginable way. Her story serves as a chilling reminder of how even the most seemingly innocent friendships can mask dark and dangerous secrets. The murder of Skylar Neese raised difficult questions about the psychology of the perpetrators. How could two girls, who had been Skylar's closest friends, plot and carry out such a violent and senseless act? What drove Shelia and Rachel to betray their friend in the most horrific way? Experts in psychology and criminology have examined the case extensively, seeking to understand what motivated Shelia and Rachel. At the core of their actions was a complex web of jealousy, manipulation, and possibly a desire for control. Shelia, in particular, exhibited traits that suggested she thrived on power and attention. Her manipulation of Rachel, who was described as more shy and reserved, seemed to play a key role in the crime. Reports indicated that Rachel may have been heavily influenced by Shelia's personality, following her lead despite her own moral reservations. Rachel's initial reluctance to act on the plan suggests that she may have struggled with guilt, but ultimately she became complicit in the murder. Her confession to the police was a result of her emotional breakdown, indicating that she was unable to cope with the weight of the crime. For Shelia, however, the murder seemed to be a more calculated decision, born out of a desire to rid herself of a perceived burden. Shelia's lack of emotion in the aftermath of the murder, coupled with her ability to maintain an outward appearance of normalcy, suggested a lack of empathy and an ability to compartmentalize her actions. This psychological profile raised questions about the extent to which Shelia had planned the murder and whether she had ever truly considered the consequences of her actions. Experts in juvenile crime have pointed out that both Shelia and Rachel were still in their formative years when they committed the crime. Adolescents, particularly those who struggle with emotional and social issues, are often more susceptible to the influence of their peers and can make impulsive decisions with long-lasting consequences. The case highlighted the importance of early intervention and mental health support for young people who may be struggling with internal conflicts or emotional turmoil. In the years following their arrests, Shelia Eddy and Rachel Schoaf faced legal consequences for their involvement in Skylar's death. Shelia, who was convicted of first-degree murder, was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years. Rachel, who cooperated with the authorities and eventually pled guilty to second-degree murder, was sentenced to 30 years in prison, with eligibility for parole after 10 years. The sentences were controversial, particularly for Rachel, who received a lesser sentence despite her active role in the crime. Many argued that her cooperation and emotional breakdown should not lessen the severity of her actions. Others felt that Shelia, who had been the more manipulative and calculated of the two, deserved a harsher sentence. Despite their differing sentences, both girls faced a long period of time behind bars. The legal system's handling of the case sparked debates about juvenile justice, the ability of young people to be rehabilitated, and the degree to which their actions should be judged by adult standards. In 2021, Rachel Schoaf was granted parole after serving only 8 years of her 30-year sentence. Her release sparked outrage among many who felt that she had not served enough time for taking part in the murder of Skylar. Some saw her release as an indication that the justice system had failed Skylar's family. However, Rachel expressed remorse for her actions in her parole hearing, and the decision to release her was based on the belief that she had undergone significant rehabilitation while in prison. Shelia, on the other hand, remains incarcerated and is not eligible for parole until 2027. She has maintained her innocence throughout her trial and has not shown the same level of remorse that Rachel did. As of now, Shelia's future remains uncertain, and she is still viewed by many as a symbol of the dangers of manipulation and betrayal. Skylar Neese's life may have been tragically cut short, but her memory lives on through the tireless efforts of her parents and the awareness that her case brought to light. Skylar's story has become a powerful cautionary tale about the dangers of toxic friendships, the potential for violence among teenagers, and the importance of being vigilant about the emotional well-being of those around us. The Neese family's advocacy for missing persons and mental health awareness continues to have a far-reaching impact. Through their work, they have ensured that Skylar's life and death are not forgotten. Skylar Neese's story serves as a reminder of the profound and sometimes dangerous effects of betrayal, and how the choices we make, especially in our relationships, can have life-altering consequences.